We are less than a week away from college football, and specifically in the SEC, in determining a champion. All right, we bring in Mike Loveall of Last Word on Sports to talk up the SEC, and everybody, Mike, loves predictions. It's that time of year when people try to prognosticate what we're going to see in January. So let's start in the SEC Eastern Division. Georgia has been the team that in recent years has been the odds-on favorite each and every year. Even when they don't win the division, they're still considered the best team with the most talent. Tennessee's up and coming, but Mizzou has obviously pulled off the surprise now 2 years in a row.
Yeah, Mark, and I think in the SEC East, I think we're going to see a lot of the same. It's going to be status quo. I like Georgia this year. I think they're going to do better than they have in the past couple of years. I am a little bit concerned about quarterback. The first two things I look at when I look at predictions for the upcoming season is returning quarterback and number of returning starters. A lot of questions all throughout the SEC East. Georgia has their share of questions. Schottenheimer, offensive coordinator, who's going to be the quarterback. But what they don't have questions are they're going to have a really good defense. They return 6 of 11 starters. They're going to have a great running game. They got 4 of the 5 offensive line coming back, and, of course, you got Nick Chubb and a couple other good running backs there. I think Georgia will win the East again. I think they will finish probably 10-2. If I had to guess, I think they have a chance of beating Alabama or Auburn this year. I see Tennessee at 9-3 coming in. I think if the cards fall right, they could actually challenge Georgia. But I think Tennessee's on the rise. They have a very good schedule lined up. They only play 4 true away games with 1 away game in Nashville. They get Georgia at home. And they travel to Florida. I think the Florida game is the most important game for them. I think it's better they travel to Florida because they're still a young team. But they return a ton of starters, and they've had, for the exception of the offensive coordinator, continuity in the coaching staff. So I look for Tennessee and Butch Jones to make that jump in his 3rd year this year. Missouri is always the wild card team in the SEC East. I still haven't figured them out even after 2 years. I think they finished 8-4, but they could finish anywhere between 4-8 and 13-0. Who knows with Missouri? But I think they finished 8-4 and 3rd place in the East. South Carolina at 6-6. I'm kind of hesitant about that. For some reason, I think they might finish a little bit better. They named Connor Mitch the starting quarterback this week. But I look at their schedule. I look at their opponents. They could finish up with Clemson. Clemson's a good team. They start with North Carolina. I think they'll beat North Carolina, although North Carolina is a quality team. I just see South Carolina. I see that as a program kind of maybe on the downslope. A lot of questions about Spurrier. So we'll see. But I think 6-6. I think really the upstart of the East this year will be Kentucky. I think Kentucky's going to surprise. I think Kentucky's going to get an upset or 2 this year. Remember, they were a horrible call at Florida away from going bowling last year, and they were only a few seconds away from beating Louisville. So they were 2 minutes away from being 7-5 last year and going to a pretty good bowl. So I think they're going to get better. A good passing attack up there with Towels, decent running game. It really is going to depend on how well their defense develops in the SEC East. Florida is the team I'm most concerned about. I looked at their schedule. I really think they're looking at 5-7. Complete coaching turnover on the offense and defense. McElwain's bringing in a new system. They haven't decided on their quarterback yet. Not sold on their running game. Their defense, should be top tier, particularly on the backside. But they did lose a lot of talent last year. So we'll see. I think Florida is in for a transitional year. I think McElwain will be able to bring that program back up. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it this year. And then Vanderbilt at 7th place, they're at 3-9 with no conference wins. So that's how I see the SEC East. A lot of question marks, but I think that general pecking order, I think every team is kind of 1 or 2 spots away from. I think everybody has the same teams in the same 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, Tennessee and Missouri obviously have the quarterbacks coming back with Josh Dobbs and Matty Mock. That puts them in good position, at least there. They have, especially with Mock having started most of the last 2 seasons, they positions them in a place where we have a known commodity. Georgia would have at least the best defense on paper. I think Tennessee's very close. Tennessee's in a position where you would know much more about this, but they have a interesting combination of youthful experience because they've been so young the last few years. They put so many freshmen on the field that those guys that are only sophomores and juniors have a ton of experience. And there are certainly some camps out there that believe that Tennessee's ready to explode this season. They have certainly recruited like a few others around the country the last few years. Mizzou would be down the charts in regards to talent, but we know that they've finished 7-1 the last 2 years despite not having the kind of playmakers on the outside. My concern with Mizzou is that in the past few years they have had high caliber NFL type of defensive linemen, especially at the end positions. They've lost that with Marcus Golden and Shane Ray. Maybe they have somebody waiting in the wings, but they don't have the proven game changers that get into the backfield, cause havoc, and keep the game under control where they like it in that 17 to 14 range. Florida could be a complete mess. If you ship them off to another conference, they have enough talent in certain spots to possibly carry them to 7, 8, 9 wins maybe. But in the SEC, you mentioned the schedule, and when you look at Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mizzou, LSU, and Georgia in 5 consecutive weeks, that's pretty rough for the Gators to try to get through that. So they should go 3-1 outside the league, but it's going to be difficult for them to find wins outside of Vanderbilt. And then the Kentucky and South Carolina games are toss-ups for them. I'm interested to see what the Gamecocks do with a new quarterback. And they've been very set at quarterback for the last several years, as has Georgia for many years, knowing who the starter was going to be coming back. So I think Georgia's the safe pick. I'm going with Tennessee to win the division and get to the SEC championship game. All right, Mike, we can move to the West now.
Absolutely. So in the West, I think the West is going to be absolutely fascinating to watch this year. I think there's probably 6 of the 7 teams that could probably win the West if the cards fall right. I think Mississippi State's the only one that probably really can't expect to win the West. But I'll tell you, coming in, I think Alabama's going to win the West. I think it's a popular year not to pick Alabama, which seems to be the years they do well. If you go back and look at Alabama's 2 national championship years, they're years where people didn't pick them. If you look at the years they disappoint, those are the years coming off the championship years. Of course, the only thing I'm concerned about with Alabama is the quarterback who's going to look good. I think it's going to be better than last year. And I'm a Tennessee guy, so for as much animosity as I have for Lane Kiffin, he certainly improved their offense last year. So I think Alabama will actually surprise a few people by winning the West. I think they lose 1 game during the regular season. Not really sure where that's going to be on the calendar. I think it'll probably be Texas A&M. They travel to Texas A&M. A&M's coming off of a bye week. They had Mississippi State before that. If you're gonna beat the Alabama defense, A&M has the ability to stretch the field with their deep receivers and their running backs who can catch the ball well. If Kyle Allen is up to the task, if he's able to handle the pressure, and if he's matured over the last year, I think A&M stands a really good chance of beating Alabama there in College Station. I think A&M comes in second. A&M's kind of my surprise team in the SEC this year, 10-2. I think it all hinges on, again, Kyle Allen's maturation. He showed glimpses last year of greatness, but then he had a couple off games as well. But we know what Kevin Sumlin can do with quarterbacks. We know they have great receivers. They have Reynolds down there. They have Speedy Noel. I think John Chavis is going to make a huge difference. If you look at what he did at Tennessee, the national championship years, the former years, if you look at what he did at LSU, he's always had top defenses. I have Auburn coming in, so I have A&M at 10-2. I have Auburn at 10-2 as well. I think Auburn's going to be a quality team. I am a little bit concerned with their defense. I don't think Muschamp is going to have as much success at Auburn in year 1 as John Chavis will have at A&M. I do think they have talent on the defensive end. I just don't know they're going to have that much success. Their offense does look to be good, and everybody's hyping up Jeremy Johnson. I still think he has to prove himself, though. Not sold that he is as high of a caliber guy as everybody's touting. I think Mississippi's going to have a solid year at 9-3. Defense is going to carry them again. They do have Laquan Treadwell coming back, but again, they have questions at quarterback as well. Arkansas, another popular pick. I think they're going to be a strong team. I think they'll probably be the best 5th place in their division team in the nation. Looking at them at 8-4. They lost one of their running backs, but they do have a seasoned veteran quarterback coming back. They still have another 1,000-yard running back coming back. I like their tight end. And their defense, the word out of Fayetteville is their defense is much improved. That's really how much better their defense has gotten from last year will really depend on whether they win 7 games or whether they win 9 or 10 games. I have them at 8-4, coming in behind Mississippi for 5th place. LSU at 8-4. I'm really concerned about the quarterback situation. Neither one of those guys did well last year. Still the same 2 guys competing. They do have Leonard Fournette. And they do have a seasoned offensive line coming back, but we saw last year that Fournette and the line couldn't carry that offense. If you look at LSU over the last decade, since Les Miles has been there, if he hasn't had his 2 top defensive coordinators, he has not had good seasons. I think this is going to be a really telling year in Baton Rouge. If LSU does not have a good season, look for Les Miles to start looking around. Look for fans in Baton Rouge to not be very happy with Les Miles. They're going, if they do not have a good year this year, they're going to start attributing the success of the past decade to their defensive coordinators. And then I think they're going to finish 8-4. Still a solid year, but I don't think people in Baton Rouge are going to be happy. A little bit. I think the expectations around LSU are a little bit high in the preseason. And I think Mississippi State still a good team, but I have them finishing 4-8. I think really Dak Prescott and his receivers are the only kind of weapon on that team. They don't have a lot of people coming back on defense. I just don't know that they can hang 4 quarters with that SEC West schedule. So I see them at 7th at 4-8. It's still a decent team. I just don't think they have the depth this year to hang with the SEC West schedule. But again, I think it's wide open. I think any of those top 6 teams could finish in at any of those positions 1 through 6. So I'm really excited about watching the SEC West this year. What about you, Mark?
Well, let me get this straight, Mike. You've got Mississippi State finishing 4-8.
Yes, Mark, I do. If you look at their schedule, let's see. I think LSU is going to beat them. I think Auburn and A&M will beat them. That's the one upset I have Kentucky making. I think Kentucky at home in Starkville comes in. Again, I'm worried about Mississippi State's defense. I think it's going to be a shootout game. I would put the over/under at about 100 points for that game. I think it's going to be towels in the air versus versus Prescott, but I think Kentucky comes away with that. I have them losing at Missouri on a Thursday night, and then Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi. Those last 3 games, I think are just going to. I'm concerned about Mississippi State's depth, particularly on defense. I just don't think they're going to be able to hang all 4 quarters with that SEC West schedule.
Okay, because they're playing nobody out of conference, so they've got 4 wins out of conference.
Yeah. Southern Miss, Northwestern State, Troy, and Louisiana Tech.
So they're going to go 0-8 in the conference.
I think there's a very good chance of that. So out of the East, they get Missouri and Kentucky. I think they can win both of those games, but I think in the end, they don't. But they certainly could win both of those games.
The West is so good. I'm looking at the lineups that you just laid out there, and I'm thinking there's a possibility, and this was before you talked in certain terms about Mississippi State, so you obviously feel they're going to fall off, and a lot of that has to do with obviously facing a brutal SEC Western Division schedule. But I think Mississippi State's going to be considerably better than that, maybe 3-5 in the conference and go 7-5 overall. You could make a case for just about everybody in the SEC West being better than everyone in the East, aside from maybe Georgia and probably Tennessee. But I'm going to go with Alabama winning the conference as well, winning the division, and then going on to win the SEC championship, because I think the front 7 on defense may be the best in college football. I think they'll fix the issues they had in the secondary. They're not void of talent back there. They just had missed assignments, and they had some injuries as well. I think offensively they can rely on the running game, develop the quarterback, whether that be Coker or Sims or Alec Morris or Barnett, wherever they go for a quarterback. I think they're going to be in good shape because the running back game is so good, and they do lose their 3 top pass catchers, but they're loaded there as well with Chris Black and company. A&M is the interesting pick that you make here, and I don't know that I'm going to select them to win 10 games, but I'm right on board with them being the dark horse in the West. They've piled up recruiting classes in the top 5 time after time, and a lot of that has been on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen deplorable defensive play out of A&M since they've joined the SEC, so it's time for John Chaffetz to come in and clean things up, and I think there's been a Big 12 type mentality that they've brought to the SEC defensively, and instead of chasing guys and playing flag football in the secondary, they've realized that Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry, those guys mean business, and they're coming between the tackles, and they gotta man up and play some different mindset on that side of the football, because until I see that, it's going to be difficult for me to pick them to win 10 games in the SEC.
I can guarantee you Chavis is going to change his mindset. That I can guarantee.
So that's my issue with A&M, but I'm right on board with them offensively. And when you recruit that kind of talent defensively, and then you put the coaching in place to not only scheme up the defense and also deliver the instruction and the technique, but also the mindset, and put those 3 items for the defense together, they could take a big leap defensively. I believe in Kyle Allen, and I think across the board Texas A&M might have the best wide receiver group in all of college football. Like you, Jeremy Johnson, he's got all the tangibles, the measurements, the arm, the athleticism, and everything, but he's played 1 substantial game against Arkansas, and that's all he has on his track record at this point. I'm a bit leery about Ole Miss because they are breaking in a new quarterback, and they have yet to show that they can run the football against quality defenses. They've had issues running the football in recent years and don't really have that guy. I thought during the regular season that they had the best defensive showing in the country against a quality schedule. I thought they were outstanding on defense. They've lost some of that. Cody Pruitt and some other guys. The one issue that they have on defense coming back is that they're so thin at linebacker. They've moved C.J. Johnson to defensive end to middle linebacker, where he was recruited after playing there in high school to try to solidify the play calling on defense and really the core of that defense at middle linebacker. So Ole Miss should be really good, but things are so tight and so difficult in the West. Somebody's got to lose these games. And same thing with Arkansas. I think maybe the hype in the offseason is a little heavy based on 3 games. So they were at the brink of beating good teams, and then they finally pushed through and looked so good against a beaten-up Ole Miss team and an offensively challenged LSU team. 2 really good teams, but that had their issues at that point in the season. And then the team that they played, Texas, in the Texas Bowl, was in nowhere near an SEC Western Division team. So Arkansas may not take the leap that a lot of people foresee, but I'm right there at about 8-4 as well with the Hogs. LSU's interesting because I think they have the makings of a championship team aside from the guy under center. So that's difficult in that I think they have 2 or 3 exceptional receivers. You wouldn't know it by the numbers because the ball doesn't come their way on time at the right times. They have the great running back. They have the offensive line. The defense is exceptional. They may have the best secondary in college football. But if Brandon Harris and/or Anthony Jennings can't be more efficient and make some big plays. So think Georgia Tech with the success they had last year. They ran the ball down people's throat. When they did throw it, they didn't throw it for 70% completion percentage. They threw it for 50% completion percentage, but they only threw like 5 interceptions the whole year, and they hit big plays downfield. So the LSU quarterback in a big game doesn't need to be 24 for 33. He needs to be 12 for 20, throw for 150 yards, hit like 4 big plays, and take care of the ball. So if they can get that, then I would see them challenging in the West.
Mark, I totally agree with you. Like I said, I think any of those teams, if the quarterback at LSU grows up and they can make plays, LSU can certainly make a run for the division title. And of course, you always have to consider injuries. So I think I'm really excited about the SEC West this year. I think any of those top 6 teams. I don't think Mississippi State can contend for the division title, but I think any of those teams can. It's really going to be interesting to watch these teams. We'll find out a lot early. Alabama playing Wisconsin next weekend. Auburn playing Louisville next weekend. I'm really excited to see that game. I want to see Auburn's defense go up against Louisville's offense. And I think that Texas A&M ASU game might well be the best game of the week, and I'd put the over/under at about 100 for that game.
For pure entertainment, I want to see Arizona State and Texas A&M. And I'm not one of those guys that likes to see wide receivers running loose in the secondary against no defense. I like a defensive game. I like when the offense has to earn it against a good defense that is sound, it can rush the passer and tackle, but that's still going to be fun. Arizona State, Texas A&M is going to be, there are going to be athletes all over that field on both sides. Arizona State's a really good team. The game that I like from a traditional standpoint is Alabama, Wisconsin, run it between the tackles, trench warfare, and really good stuff between the Badgers and the Tide. And I like the whole SEC Big Ten dynamic there. So it's Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship game for Mike. It's Alabama against Tennessee for me. So, Mike, we'll see how this thing shakes out.
Well, I'm not allowed to pick Tennessee anyway. But if it is Alabama, Tennessee, and Atlanta, then I will be there.
Good stuff. Mike Loveall from Last Word on Sports. Check out his work there because it's not your typical internet fodder, sports college football fodder. It's interesting stuff that you can dig in and learn something. So check him out there. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mark, for having me. Thanks again.